It's also important to look at the intensity of the anger to see if it's just the husband or if not being seen and appreciated goes back to her childhood. If the anger is especially intense, one can suspect that the husband is a stand-in for someone in her past, which should be differentiated and sorted out so that the husband is getting only his share of her anger and not a core figure share as well. If she did not tell her husband she was angry, that is likely one of her distancing mechanisms. If it is, the same defense will eventually be manifest in her relationship with a therapist, who will inevitably not see and acknowledge her as well, since all therapists, even the best ones, miss things from time to time. So this has major implications for the transference and the therapeutic relationship. Hi there, I am Johannes Keating, and today I want to talk about personal freedom or autonomy, expectations, reasonable and unreasonable, and the transference. So I hope that this will be coherent, but I'm not sure because this feels like it's going to be a bit of a stream of consciousness type of a thing. So we will find out. I'll share some basic overview type thoughts, and then I will share a clinical vignette for us to reflect on. I'm not necessarily going to provide all the answers, but it'll be, hey, food for thought. Let's think about this together kind of a thing. So the significance of expectations is profound, in my opinion. Expectations, whether they're implicit or explicit, they form a cornerstone of our lives. They structure the rules for engagement with other people. They give clarity to our roles. They provide a model for predicting and anticipating future behaviors, both our own and others. By the way, Hannah Levinson, she writes about time-limited dynamic psychotherapy. She has a few good things to say about the importance of expectations and exploring patient expectations. But anyway, I digress. The issue of expectations, it also cuts to the heart of where our autonomy begins and where it ends. Expectations define the line where my freedom is curtailed lest I'm encroaching upon your freedom or your autonomy. It cuts to the issue of what is a request, what is a demand, what amounts to me doing you a favor, meaning I might choose to do something for you, but I'm not obligated to do it. And the question of expectations, reasonable or unreasonable, it has major implications for psychotherapy, very obviously so for couples therapy, but also individual therapy. And I think that much of what goes into the transference, importing and displacing old relational templates and then superimposing them upon the therapist or upon the partner, it involves expectations. Expectations that often make sense in a different context, but in the present one are not commensurate to the situation at hand. They have a distorting influence. Much of the time, these expectations are not conscious, though sometimes they are, or at least they're partly conscious, or the derivatives of them are conscious. So, why is discussing expectations important, and what's the point of breaking them down into reasonable and unreasonable? The question, to my mind, is intimately connected to what are we entitled to, or what can we reasonably expect from others, and what others are obligated to do for us. The question of expectations is connected to agreements. And by the way, agreements are essential both in therapy and in life. It's connected to what we think we might be entitled to, but we're not. The latter tends to involve treating other people as if they're extensions or appendages of ourselves and our needs. That is a fairly common presentation in therapy that we encounter clients that believe that people in their lives, including the therapist, ought to be an extension of them. The question of expectations is also connected to how we treat others, especially when they frustrate our desires. Does partner A treat partner B poorly whenever partner B does not agree with partner A? Or is there some form of punishment for saying, I don't want to give you a back rub right now? So you can see that this is not only relevant to therapy, but to life in general, to relationships. Again, the issue of where our personal freedom and autonomy begins and where it ends is so central here. So let's think about this from a ground level. Let's take me. I'm entitled, meaning that I can reasonably expect for my fiance not to steal my wallet while I'm sleeping. Thank you very much. I am entitled to a modicum of common courtesy from other people that I'm interacting with. For example, I should reasonably be able to expect that you don't cut in front of me in the grocery store line, or that you apologize to me if you step on my toes, and things like that. So in most situations, I'm not entitled to anyone's obedience. I'm not entitled to my fiance's attention. Outside of explicit agreements, the only thing that I can reasonably expect from her is that she gives weight to my feelings and preferences, and that she factors them into her decision making. Outside of explicit agreements, which by the way can always be renegotiated, my fiance is not entitled to my obedience. What she can reasonably expect from me is that I give serious weight and factor in her feelings and needs into my decision making. The exception here are children. They are entitled to receiving the support that they need in order to grow up. That means that part of being a parent involves giving up a measure of our personal autonomy. If your kid is hungry, you don't have a choice between watching a movie or feeding your kid. As parents, we're obligated to tend to our young. As adults, the list of things that we're entitled to is a much, much smaller list. So let's see if we can add a little meat to the bone and think together about a case vignette. A patient is angry at her husband for not having expressed appreciation. He was away on a business trip and she single-handedly took care of their child by herself. When is it reasonable to expect verbal appreciation versus the expectation of getting appreciation amounts to being demanding, of treating the husband as an extension of her? Is it rude of the husband to not express appreciation? If he owes her appreciation, does she owe him appreciation for his labor and financial contributions to the family? What can be reasonably expected, and what amounts to treating the other as an appendage of the self? Here are some possibilities. I'm not going to analyze this too much in detail or provide answers, but instead I'll raise questions that we can reflect on together. At a basic level, if the wife wants more appreciation and is not getting it, her anger is valid. The question is the husband in the wrong? Anger at another, coupled with understanding that the other has not done anything wrong, versus they have indeed done something wrong, is a critical distinction. Is the husband derelict in his duty somehow for not thanking her? Is she owed appreciation? If so, is he also owed appreciation for financially supporting the family? It's also important to look at the intensity of the anger to see if it's just the husband, or if not being seen and appreciated goes back to her childhood. If the anger is especially intense, one can suspect that the husband is a stand-in for someone in her past, which should be differentiated and sorted out so that the husband is getting only his share of her anger and not a core figure share as well. If she did not tell her husband she was angry, that is likely one of her distancing mechanisms. If it is, the same defense will eventually be manifest in her relationship with a therapist, who will inevitably not see and acknowledge her as well, since all therapists, even the best ones, miss things from time to time. So this has major implications for the transference and the therapeutic relationship. If she did communicate her anger to her husband, did she do so in a shaming and demeaning way, or was she open and intimate and clear? It's important to determine whether or not there is demonization of the husband, and if so, to what degree. Is he actually a thoughtless, narcissistic man? Or was he just tired and exhausted from his business trip? That's not to say that the intensity of her anger will increase or diminish, but rather the husband will be seen as he is, as opposed to being seen through the filter of a childhood relationship. Demonizing people could be a major defense mechanism. Again, this could have major implications for the transference in the therapeutic relationship. Assuming the husband is thoughtless and narcissistic, is this a pattern? Does she repeatedly choose men who don't see and acknowledge her and are only focused on their own priorities instead? It's also possible that she was appropriately angry at her husband, clear that he had not really violated some 11th commandment, but nevertheless angry at not getting more appreciation, and that there is no therapy implications here at all. Just an emotionally healthy reaction as part of a basically healthy marriage. So, as you can see, there are really infinite possibilities here. Which of these, if any, are applicable can only be determined by sorting things out in detail with a particular client or patient in front of you. So this is some food for thought when it comes to the question of expectations, reasonable, not reasonable, the transference, evaluating the intensity of the feelings as a way of gauging whether or not there's some transference in the picture, or the emotional response is simply commensurate to the situation at hand. And when it comes to the question of personal freedom and autonomy. So there we have it. I hope I gave you something interesting to think about. Until next time, be well.